What's up YouTube, ODST General back again with another Operation Trebuchet news update. So before we get going guys, I just want to give you a heads up. I am kind of playing around with the idea of changing the day we do the OpTray news update. Obviously the last few times and more recently I've been having a harder and harder time hitting the Friday time slot. Especially since I've been kind of going back to work here and I'm doing work from home and stuff. I'm having just a lot of difficulty fitting it into the schedule I did have, where I could always work on it consistently on like Wednesdays and stuff like that, and then have it out and have time to edit it for Friday. I don't know exactly when I plan to update that release. If you guys aren't already, make sure to follow me on my Discord, because the videos always get posted over there, and of course hit the bell icon and all that stuff, and that way you guys will also be notified when it comes out, so that if you guys miss when the release change is going to be coming out, you will at least still be getting the videos and stuff like that. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into it. Surprisingly, this week you actually have a lot more to show off than we did in the last video after a long pause. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Starting us off, we have Forky's Battle Rifle. This is a nice render of it. We've already basically seen it like this. There's not too much else new to show here, but it is beautiful eye candy, and I love this this BR. All the detail and stuff in it is very cool, but like I said, not much else to see there, so we're going to keep ahead and move on here. And we're going to go on to another battle rifle, which is a render by Vespade. So, of course, Vespade's render lacking textures and stuff like that, but still very cool nonetheless. Of course, personally for me, Halo 3 has always been my favorite game, so I like the fact that we are still getting the Halo 3 battle rifle, although I do like the over-designed Halo 2 Anniversary version a little bit better, I think. With that being said, we do have more interesting weapons, such as the Spartan-sized, probably even bigger than Spartan-sized M6B. So this is a new weapon being designed for field testing purposes, and yeah, so this is the M6B by Forky. Joking aside, this is of course the initial upload for this weapon. It is very much not final, of course. It is massive, it's untextured, and it's amazing. I love it. I do kind of wish they'd upload a giant version like this just for jokes into like something like Spec Ord. Nonetheless, we do have actually a little bit better weapons to look at here, even still. Starting us off though with the other weapons is the MA37 getting an overhaul. A bunch of stuff basically like we're seeing with the other weapons, model improvements, texture and materials improvements, and some actual functionality changes and stuff there. Most interestingly so far is the high-rise scope. So the ammo counter will be replaceable, and you'll be able to put a scope on top of the MA37. Now, some people may like this, some people may not. Personally, I think this is a great option. We've seen in some models, and I think even in some of the official concept art, that the ammo counter on the MA37 was kind of interchangeable, so it's great to see this functionality here, to be able to put like scopes and different stuff on there. I think that's fantastic. It's also getting some side rails and stuff like that, so things like flashlights and laser designator, stuff like that will be able to clip onto the side as well, onto those side rails. So that's a nice little upgrading attachment there and all that stuff. And we just get a few more images of this, as you can see the model pass and upgrade and everything. Unfortunately, I don't really have any really good side-by-sides of it, but you guys can kind of see the improvements from one model to the next. That brings us over to the DMR once more, which Vespade is teasing a 60-round magazine on what is normally a 15-round gun. That is a huge magazine. It's pretty ridiculous, but as you can see, there is room for different magazine sizes and the ammo counter to change respectively for those, so that's pretty fantastic. I love that that's a thing. Functionally, I don't know if I'd ever actually use a 16-round magazine, although it's certainly very useful, so I don't see any reason why not. Now, personally for me, the next gun is probably the one I'm most excited for, since it's actually a new weapon, which is the MA37K, or the BMRK, or whatever you want to call it. We've got one picture of its initial implementation where the texture is all screwed up and wacky and everything. Not the greatest picture. Thankfully, we have another picture that was uploaded, and this is still very much a work in progress that Vespade's been working on, but we get to see it with its actual texture and everything. This is, once again, bear in mind, not final. Vespade is still working out materials and texturing and everything for this, but it looks fantastic. Of course, functionally, I'm not exactly sure how this will compare to the MA37 or to the actual MA5K. nonetheless, like I said, it's a gorgeous looking weapon. I'm excited to actually see this thing in game. That then brings us on over to armors, which we start off with Burgess. Burgess has his CMA armor, work in progress, showing off the shoulder pads, and a little Kilroy was here somewhere hidden on the armor. I'm not exactly sure where that Easter egg is. Probably somewhere on the inside of the armor, I would imagine, though. More interestingly, though, we get to see a zoomed out thing for the body armor. You get to see kind of a... I can't tell if they're actually textured yet or not. It might just be the... color coding inside the 3D modeler, I'm not sure. But you get to see kind of a basic version of the helmet, which is of course not finalized, and then you're also seeing the body armor, and it looks fantastic. I definitely love the look of this armor and everything. The camouflage you're seeing under is not the actual camouflage that they're going to be using, but it still looks very good nonetheless, and I actually kind of like the look of that camouflage. I would be happy to see olive green, or maybe, a mix of olive and camouflage or something. I think looks really good like that. So kind of interested to see what he ends up doing with that finalized, but very excited for that being in the game as like an Int 4 faction or something like that. That also brings us a comment from Burgess regarding that armor, and he's talking about the hidden selection options for that vest to give various customization options. So all those armor reskin packs and stuff that live units do, you guys can look forward to these parts. Collar, marksman pouches, sniper pouches, standard pouches, SMG pouches, medical pouches, grenade launcher rounds, and load-bearing machine gun harness, possibly. So, all fantastic stuff. And that's all we have to talk about for the CMA. But we do have more armor to talk about, so let's go ahead and talk about that. We've got some OP4 armor being worked on by Ethan. Very cool stuff. You can see it's very basic initially, but he's starting to flesh it out, and I like the direction this is going, although it's still very early, so it's really hard to see how this is going to turn out once it's textured and more detailed and everything. And I don't know if there's any basis for this. I suspect he's kind of winging it with it, but it works out. I do kind of like the OP4. I know a lot of people aren't huge fans of it that we have currently. Other than the screwy LODs, it is based off of concept art. I think it just needs to be cleaned up and changed a little bit, maybe a little bit thicker because it's a little thin, I think. Other than that, though, I would love to see that touched up, but I do like that we're getting some new OP4 armor because there's so many different factions of insurrectionists and everything, and that's one of the big things I've heard a lot of people criticize OpTrade for, is a lack of OP4 and Infor content, and so it's nice to see that we're finally getting that stuff that's fleshed out, that's nice and unique, but it's also not UNSC standard issue stuff. And with that, with all those pictures out of the way, that then brings us to vehicles. So as far as vehicles go, we've got another further look at the ODST Drop Pod that Hollywood has been working on. I said Big Woke last week, or I guess almost a week before now, and that was a slip of the tongue. Big Woke developed a lot of the Drop Pod system, and that was not supposed to be who actually developed the pod. Hollywood is developing this new pod, and Big Woke was a slip of the tongue. So I just need to correct that, because Vesprade will never let me live that down. Especially because I get other devs confused, which I don't understand why. There's only like 50,000 of you devs at this point. Anyways, yeah, we got this awesome looking ODST Drop Pod, and you guys get to see a side-by-side comparison of this one to the old one in the game. The old one that's currently in the game right now that you have available as a standard user is a combination of the Halo 2 and Halo 3 ODST Drop Pod. So you can see it's got that rough silhouette of the Halo 2 Drop Pod, and then it's got the window and stuff, which is kind of based off the ODST version. And I was looking at the size comparisons, and I was kind of concerned about the sizing, and I asked Hollywood about it, and unfortunately the new Drop Pod will not work with the Drake class as it currently stands. Hollywood did say he was interested in possibly altering the Drake class to be suitable for this new pod, but it sounds like we might get to keep both pods in the game, or we may possibly see an actual like Halo 2 version of the pod without the window. That was kind of sort of hinted at, that there was maybe something they were working on there that they weren't ready to talk about yet. That is all speculation. That's very, very big speculation, so take that with a big grain of salt, because I have no evidence or anything for that. Just the way it was worded. So hopefully that's something we can we'll be seeing, is like maybe actual like new variations of like both the actual Halo 2 drop pod and the Halo 3 ODST style drop pods would be great. Aside from that, not much else to say on these drop pods, just a bunch of side-by-side pictures and some new images of the drop pod being worked on, as well as, its drag chute and all that stuff. Then we've got Oshin Saber, which is very cool. So yeah, his saber is, of course, still very much work in progress. Not a huge amount of changes since the last time we saw it. A lot more detailing work. It looks like we've got some working air brakes possibly there. Maybe those are flaps. I'm not sure what their functionality will be for the sake of Arma. I don't know if I've ever actually seen an air brake in Arma that's part of like the default game. I've seen stuff that's like modded in as a scroll wheel, so we maybe would see a scroll wheel option for that, or it could just be integrated as part of, like I said, the flap functionality for the actual craft that way. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. I should have contacted him about that, but I didn't really think of it until I was just sitting here looking at the drop pod right now as I was sitting here. Beyond that, we also have... Actually, that's all we have for the main mod. So what we then go into is, of course, First Contact. So speaking of First Contact, we'll start off with the development branch. The development branch of First Contact got a update with installation 04. Nido Wizard has gone in and added a bunch of interior structures and compositions. So whereas the map was populated with a bunch of Forerunner structures before, mostly it was just the Forerunner signal installations, which is, of course is arguably composition because it's a two-part structure. And there was a couple of interior structures, but not too much. Now we've got a bunch of very large interior structures with several hallways that lead up onto open platforms that overlook large areas, as well as a couple other independent, unique structures, which are just fantastic looking. I really like this new update. Adds a lot of new playable areas that are going to be fun and interesting for people to actually utilize. Unfortunately, of course, this is on the dev branch, so not really multiplayer friendly quite yet. But if you guys want to hop in there, check it out, or if you're willing to try and brave getting the dev branch to work multiplayer friendly, you guys are welcome to do that. I do highly recommend checking out that map mod upgrade. And then wrapping things up with First Contact, and the rest of this week's video is the drop pod for First Contact. So, of course, the UNSC is getting a drop pod. We're also getting a Covenant drop pod, which I believe this one's being worked on by Marstruck. And it's a pretty good looking drop pod, very basic, and we kind of talked about last week. They've talked about adding possibly thrusters to the top and stuff. So a little bit of artist discretion there as far as the functionality and appearance of it goes. With that being said, though, I like the stuff they've done. We see a very basic version, which is what you actually see in game, and then we also see a variant with weapons holders, kind of like the ODST Drop Pod has. Of course, a little bit of a tight squeeze for the Elite, but I think it would be kind of cool to see, you know, like your carbine or your plasma rifle placed down in the drop pod. It would make sense logically, especially given how cramped it is for the Elite to not be holding their weapon on the drop down. I don't know. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on all this stuff. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and what you guys would like to see coming in the future, you know, both in this video and what we haven't seen before. Let me know in the comments below, guys. Take it easy. I'll see you in the next one.